Hi there, and welcome to today's video, My Story with the Akashic Records. My name is Ahna Hendrix. I'm a spiritual guide, Akashic Soul Channel, and teacher, and the host of the Soul Driven podcast. Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you are interested in the Akashic Records, then I highly recommend hitting subscribe. I have been showing up on YouTube for like 10, 15 years now at some point, on and off. It's not something I've ever fully dedicated myself to, but that is changing in a really big way. So if you'd like to learn more about the Akashic Records, if you would like to come here just to dive into all things Akasha, intuition, spiritual development, energy management, all of the good stuff that is so needed and necessary in these times, then I highly recommend tuning in, recommending this channel to anyone else who may benefit from it. So today I am going to just be sharing with you my journey with the Akashic Records. I'm going to stay pretty high level so that you aren't here for forever, because I know you have a life, you've got things to do, but this is such an incredible story, and one that I get to hear again and again from different clients that I work with. I teach people how to access the Akashic Records. I mentor people in the Akashic Records. There's a number of things I do in the Akasha, but I was the CEO of a marketing agency for over a decade before I came to this work. This is not what I ever set out to do. And so I'd like to share my story with you and just give you a little bit of excitement and hope around not only who I am, since I've never introduced myself properly on my YouTube channel, but also share a bit about the Akashic Records with you, because we're going to be diving in deep. I'm going to be telling you a lot about the Akashic Records in the weeks, months, years to come. I mean, because everything is located within the Akasha, like we have we have never-ending topics to discover and explore together. So thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So first and foremost, I'd like to share a little bit with you about my background, my context. I am a soul who was born into this lifetime knowing God. And when I talk about God, I am not talking about religion. I am not talking about it being associated with any one necessary perspective. For me, God is love. And whether you want to call God source or universe, goddess, whatever the case may be for you, that is who God is for me. God has always been love, and God has always been a guiding light in my life, throughout my life. We have gone on adventures together. Our relationship has grown and evolved through time together. God has always, always been a part of my life. And I'm so grateful for this, unbelievably grateful for this, because having a personal relationship with God has given me confidence and insight and understanding about life, wisdom that I have been able to lean on time and time again. And regardless of the difficulties and the hard things that I've gone through with my life, I've always had God to come back and lean on and ask for assistance. And, God and I, we're like this. And if you stick around this channel, then you'll hear me talk about this a whole lot more. So suffice it to say, I grew up as a very spiritual person. I saw angels when I was a young girl. I grew up in a church. I actually grew up in a Christian family and was a Christian myself for many, many years. But although I, really experienced a lot of my spirituality and a lot of my faith through the lens of Christianity, it was always so much more, again, because of my personal relationship with God, and that being a very unique thing to have. One of the things that I always saw growing up in the church was a lack of a personal relationship with God. People would walk around regurgitating what their preacher said or what they thought the Bible said, instead of actually connecting with God themselves and finding out what their truth was, what their wisdom was, and how God wanted to show up for them on a personal and individual level. So I always joke that like I was the most liberal Christian, that you'd meet, that I ever met, for sure. But for me, faith was always one of these things I was so fascinated by. I loved learning about other religions. I loved talking to people about God. When I was 21 years old, I would go to bars and I'd be asking people about God, and not like converting them or trying to, just curious, like, hey, what's your relationship with God? What do you think of God? Like, I've always been so curious about this. And for me, spirituality is about coming home to self, coming back to who we are, coming back to the divinity that is within all of us, every one of us, no matter who it is, no matter how much you want to think like, oh, this person doesn't have any of that. The divinity and God is within all of us. And to me, that is what spirituality is. It's not connected to any faith or any religion. So, but growing up, again, I really experienced a lot of my faith and a lot of my relationship through the lens of Christianity. Even though there was so much within the church I disagreed with, never aligned with, it was a lot of BS, quite frankly, what I saw, what I experienced. But at the same time, because I grew up in a non-denominational church, I saw a lot of very incredible things. I saw the laying on of hands. I saw people being healed instantly. I saw some really wild things that, could be considered, I don't even know, demonic in some circles, but because it was a non-denominational church, like we got down during worship. We were, people spoke in tongues, which now some people call light language, right? Like there's so many things in my upbringing that really kind of opened me up to what it was I was going to be experiencing once I stepped into the metaphysical. And that is really what I call my spiritual awakening, was when I began to step into the metaphysical. So at the end of 2018, you got to love the hair. At the end of 2018, I was actually in the midst of shutting down my second business. And in the midst of that business, I had found a piece of my purpose. I was still the CEO of a marketing agency, yet I had built this other business on the side. And having to shut down that business was one of the most painful things that I've had experienced to date. It was heartbreaking for me because I had always been looking for my purpose. Growing up, my prayer constantly was like, God, show me what my purpose is. What is my purpose? What is my purpose? So fascinating to look back on that now and be like, wow, I was always looking for this time in my life. But the whole point being, it was very, very painful. And also at the same time, I joined a group of friends who were doing a 90-day no drinking challenge. This for me was huge because I was not an alcoholic, but I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I drank a lot. I enjoyed drinking. I liked going out with friends. I worked hard during the day and I enjoyed drinking at night. I enjoyed having a glass of wine, on the off chance. I enjoyed drinking very much. And I think for me, alcohol was a way of kind of getting through like the mundane aspects of life, which were always very difficult for me because I was such a spiritual person, such a curious person. My path through life has been anything but normal. Yeah, I had zero interest in like high school and college and white picket fence and getting married and career. Like, no way. My life has been anything but. I've gone off traveling. I have done so many things in my life because that regular path was not for me. And I think that alcohol was a bit of a cap. It helped me get through the conversations that I didn't really know how to get through. It helped me to be a bit more normal, if you say. Um, so this combination of heartache and sobriety just blew the doors off of my spirituality. I literally went from someone at the very end of 2018, someone who wouldn't have been open to someone reading my tarot cards, to 3 months into 2019 having my own tarot deck. That first month of sobriety, I was questioning everything. And by the third month, I really was a very different person. 2019 was like a wild year for me because it was like all of the doors were being ripped off and I was diving into everything. I was taking courses and getting certified in shamanism, in crystal healing, in Reiki, and like diving into all of these areas. I was so curious and I was also just beyond hungry. And if you've gone through a spiritual awakening, then you know what I mean. You kind of go crazy and you're eating it all up, right? And towards the end of 2019, in the fall of 2019, I came across these words, Akashic Records. And I joke that for me, it truly was like a Hollywood moment. It was like time stopped and the heavens opened. And all of a sudden, I felt like I had found home. But I didn't really have any understanding or context for what the Akashic Records are. I was still the CEO of a marketing agency. And although I had been playing around in the spiritual world, the idea that the Akashic Records were like this energetic bank, if you will, of like all of this information was just, I couldn't even fathom it. And also I thought like, oh my gosh, you have to be this like, you know, like psychic, like this person. I still had a lot of hangups in regards to thinking whether or not this was something that I could work with. Like I just thought it was like for wizards and like, people that weren't me, bottom line. And so it was just like, okay, this is nice, interesting. And I put it aside and kept moving along. But guess what? The Akashic Records had something different for me. They chased me down like I've never been chased before. They were popping up left, right, and center. It was the wildest thing. It was like on TV shows. And I don't really watch TV. It was like in magazines and like, wait, what? It was online. It was friends. It was so weird. It was everywhere. And at the very beginning of 2020, this ad popped up one day on Facebook for Linda Howe's book, How to Read the Akashic Records. And I was just like, what? And so I was like, fine, I'm going to get this book. And so I purchased it. It arrived, I think, a couple days later on a Saturday. And I sat on my front porch and read 3/4 of that book, just boom, like flew through it. And what was so wild to me was that Linda was saying throughout the book, like, if you're reading this, then you're meant to be reading the Akashic Records. And again, I still really didn't understand what they were. I really didn't understand like what the point was. And so it was just like, okay. The thing is that, my relationship with God has continued to grow and expand and evolve throughout my life. We've gone up, we've gone down, all because of me, of course, in regards to where I was at in my life, but leading to this very huge metaphysical awakening in my life, like I was asking for so much more from God. I'm like, God, I want something tangible. I want something practical. I want to be able to like just talk with you. I want so much more. And I was really emphatic about that wanting. So when the Akashic Records came into my life, it was such a wild thing. And when I read through that book, it was like, it kind of landed. It was like, this is what I've been looking for. And it was like this beautiful gift from God. So 2 days later, I finally had the house to myself and I went into the Akashic Records the very first time. It was a Monday morning and it was wild. It was wild. Like I went in and I was seeing things and feeling things and hearing things. And it was just like this multi-sensory experience. My stomach hurt so much. I had this enormous pain. I felt like I had been thrown into the washing machine. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew with every ounce of me that my life was never going to be the same. And when my partner, my boyfriend at the time, came home from work that day, I remember telling him, like, I can't tell you what happened, but I found something. Life is never going to be the same again. Right after that event, I booked a reading with an Akashic reader because I wanted to understand like why it was that they chased me down and like what it was that I had found. I also wanted to see it in action because again, I'm curious and I wanted to know. And I'd never even had like a psychic reading or anything like that before. So it was like, okay, let's see what this is all about, right? So in the midst of this reading, I learned so many cool things. But what I really learned was that I have been working and reading the Akashic Records for hundreds of thousands of years. The Akasha and I are like this, and that the Akashic Records were going to play a really huge role in this lifetime. Now, when I came to the Akashic Records, I came to the Akashic Records for myself. I wanted to learn more about me. I wanted to understand the world around me. I wanted to heal. I had zero interest in doing readings for other people or any of the wild things that I am doing today, it just continues to blow my mind. And in fact, I hadn't even read the part in the book about how to do readings for other people because I didn't care. I wasn't there for that. Um, and so when she said they're gonna play a huge role in this lifetime, the way that I saw that at that moment was that I was going to be working with the Akasha myself throughout my life. And that obviously is not the case. What has unfolded since the beginning of 2020 has been nothing short of incredible. Right after that, I decided I wanted to take some courses. I wanted to learn how to work in the Akashic Records. For me, I'm a first line in human design. And if you know what that means, it means I'm a big freaking nerd. When I want to learn about something, I go deep and I've got all the questions and I want all the details and I want to like inundate myself. Like I just want to completely wrap myself in a particular topic. So I went in deep with the Akashic Records. Now, for me, unfortunately, a lot of these trainings really fell short of giving me the information that I really wanted and really satisfying my learning. And but what was great is that I met a couple of other Akashic readers in the midst of all of this in groups outside of the courses that I was taking, people who had been reading the Akashic Records for many years who were able to act as mentors to me. So that in combination with my guides who really started stepping in almost immediately and teaching me and showing me and pushing me really helped me to evolve in my abilities within the Akashic Records and also my relationship with the Akashic Records. It just went deeper and deeper and deeper. And just a few months in, they were like, we want you to start reading for other people. I really thought that this was because they wanted me to expand and grow in my own capabilities within the Akasha. So I dove in and started doing like one question readings for, I think I had like 45 people sign up the first time and just went left and right. And then they started coming forward and saying, okay, we want you to start doing more readings for other people, like deeper readings. And so I was just offering these up. These were free, to whoever felt called. Again, I was still the CEO of a marketing agency. And when I started doing these types of readings, things really started shifting for me. My guide stepped forward in the fall of 2020 and were like, we want you to start doing forecast messages on your podcast. And I was just like, what? I did not feel ready for it, but I was just like, okay, let's do it. Let's see what's going to happen. And things started shifting big time. What was also happening is that my agency, my marketing agency, was really starting to struggle and really starting to like bringing in new clients started to be difficult, which it had never really been. Obviously, when I was a brand new baby marketer, that first year was pretty tough. But at the same time, I always had what I needed. Things always showed up pretty easily for me because I put in a lot of work. But things really started falling apart, and I did not understand what was happening. And then in the latter part of 2020, my guides came forward and they were like, look, you are going to be a spiritual guide. You're going to be working with people through the Akashic Records, with your podcast, doing trainings, da 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 da. And I was just like, nope, not interested, not here for it, don't want it. And it was pretty wild because at that point in time, I almost kind of set my spiritual practices aside. And like I went into such a state of rebellion. I was drinking almost every day. I was just doing everything I could to ignore my guides, and they were coming in strong. They weren't going anywhere. It was such a wild time because, for me, I was just thinking like, I put in all this time into marketing. I make really good money. I'm comfortable here. I can talk about marketing at cocktail parties. Like, how the heck am I going to build a spiritual business around the Akashic Records? In my marketing business, I helped so many businesses grow and develop. I helped so many new entrepreneurs build businesses. But guess what? There's no real business model for a spiritual business. When you start building something with God, with the spiritual world, you have to understand that you are not the one driving the bus anymore. Like you're kind of in the back seat. You're a part of it because You are the vessel, you are the channel, but nonetheless, you are not in the front seat. And I was not interested, flat out not interested. I ignored them as much as I could throughout the rest of that year. And then finally, February 2021, I said, okay, fine. If you want this, if this is really what's aligned, then you're going to have to show me. I'm not putting any effort into this. I'm going to put some services on my website, and that's it. I'm not marketing it. I'm not doing anything. And of course, my website was primarily geared towards my marketing services, right? Well, I had booked a session with a Reiki master. Actually, a friend of mine had gotten a Reiki session for me for Christmas. And when I called to book this session, she was like, "What do you do?" And I told her about the marketing. She's like, "No, no, no. Like, what do you do? You work in the spiritual world. What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I work in the Akashic Records, but I just read for myself." And she was like, "No, no, no. I want you to read for me. We're gonna trade." And I was just like, "What?" Because I mean, and she was the shaman, Reiki master, had been in it for 10 plus years. And I was intimidated to say the least, but I was just like, okay. The reading that I did for her, I helped her to find clarity and restoration and healing around a topic that she had been struggling with for 30 plus years. And so what happened was she decided to then start referring all of her clients to me, which inundated my schedule for the next several months, really gave me the opportunity to work in the Akashic Records with people in exchange for money to start working through those obstacles, which are not easy, but also to really get to see what was possible in the Akashic Records for other people and how I could help other people. And that for me was really the shift point, because for me in my life, helping people, guiding people, assisting people, helping people return to themselves has always been something that I've been extremely passionate about and did in my everyday life, even without this lens of spirituality. And so I was hooked. And so I said, okay, let's do this. I'm going to give this a shot. Since then, my Akashic guides have led me into creating a new modality, my Akashic restoration sessions, which is energy healing through the Akashic Records. It's a combination of several different types of modalities. They led me into teaching people how to read the Akashic Records, which has just been honestly one of the wildest things, because as a young girl, the number one thing that I wanted to be was a teacher. I literally like made my friends play school with me as kids. And of course, I was the teacher. Um, and I have led workshops, I have channeled courses. Of course, they have completely taken over my podcast, where I love to teach. I like to bring people on. I like to share forecasts, just a number of different things. My work within the Akasha has continued to evolve deeper and deeper and deeper as I've moved forward. And what's been so great is like every step of the way has been guided and directed by my guides, by my higher self in the midst of all of this. I never set out to do any of this. And I'm still in such early stages of my business. I'm only about, I have been reading the Akashic Records for over 5 years now. Of course, I've been doing it for thousands and thousands of lifetimes. The Akasha and I are one, but, certainly in this lifetime. And my work with the Akasha just continues to deepen and broaden. I now work with people one-on-one in my Akashic transformational mentorships, which is the most powerful work that I've done to date, where we step into family dynamics, child wounding. It's very psychological work all through the Akashic Records. I have started working with neurodivergent teens, autism, a number of different things that I know are just going to continue to evolve and grow. And as someone who is also a high functioning autistic, neurodivergent person, it's just been such a wild ride. And I can't wait to see where I'm going to be at in 5 more years with the Akashic Records. So this is a little bit about my story. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about the Akashic Records, about my story, please leave them below. I will absolutely make videos about them, but we'll certainly be back and be sharing so much more information about the Akashic Records on this channel. If you want to work with me, you can check out my website. I'm always doing a number of different things. You can also come join me in the Soul Driven Collective, which is my community on Substack, where I share regular weekly updates, resources. I have a community. It's really beautiful. So in whatever way that I can support you, I would be happy to do so. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to spending more time with you here on YouTube. Sending so much love, many, many blessings. Don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.